Good afternoon. I would like to thank the conference organizers for the invitation to participate and the opportunity to share Drakewell Museum and Park with all of you. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, Drakewell Museum and Park is one of 24 historic sites owned by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and administered by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. The museum is located in Titusville, Pennsylvania, which is in the far northwest corner of the state. And for over 85 years, the museum has preserved and interpreted the site of the Drake Well, chronicling the birth and development of the petroleum industry in Pennsylvania, as well as its growth into a global enterprise. Our 240-acre site features a board-for-board replica of Edwin Drake's second engine house. It is built around the national landmark well. We also have an operating central power oil lease, an 80-foot standard drilling rig, and 12,000 square feet of interior exhibits. Also boast the largest artifact and archival collection that's focused on the birth of the oil industry in the United States. Almost 10 years ago, the museum completed an $8.75 million Commonwealth capital project to renovate our visitor center. Renovations included the addition of a geothermal energy system, an expansion and improvement of the museum's collection storage area, and the installation of a new 10,000 square foot history exhibit, part of which you see here. The museum's mission is to uncover, preserve, and share Pennsylvania's rich petroleum history, connecting past to present through a diversity of perspectives and inspiring our global audience to strive for a sustainable energy future. As such, our exhibits explore the technological, scientific, environmental, and social history of the petroleum industry and demonstrate how oil and natural gas have come to affect our daily lives. It's a story of determination, innovation, and ingenuity, but it is also a cautionary tale about petroleum's far-reaching impacts. Prior to COVID-19, the museum served between 40 and 50,000 people annually, with a full-time staff of 8 and a seasonal staff of 7 people. And as you can see here, we fulfill a number of activities within our community. Now, when visitors leave the Drake Well, what we want them to take away with them is an understanding of why the Drake Well is significant, why our historic site is significant. Now, some people visit Drake Well and they come with a preconceived notion of that significance. And what they think is that the Drake Well is the well that first discovered oil. But those of us who are attending today know better than anyone that people around the world were using oil for thousands of years prior to the Drake Well oil strike in 1859. Ancient peoples were gathering oil from naturally occurring seeps and using it to construct cities, to construct roadways, in religious ceremonies, in war, and also medicinally. One of the things that we like to focus on at Drake Well is really explaining to visitors how the indigenous peoples of North America were using oil prior to the colonization by Europeans. Now, Pennsylvania's Oil Creek Valley sits in the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, and specifically the Onondaga or Seneca people. And the site has been an oil gathering area, an oil gathering site since the early 1400s. Now, the Seneca people used oil pits, where there were naturally occurring oil seeps as a means of capturing that oil. Now, here on the bottom right, we have an image of an oil pit on the Drake Well grounds. The pits on our grounds were lined with wooden cribbing that archaeologists have carbon dated to around 1420. The pit would fill with rainwater or via a natural spring, and the oil that seeped in would float to the surface. And the Native Americans would then use bark from trees or feathers or blankets and cloth to skim the oil off of the surface of the water. And then the Seneca people traded that oil with other members of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Nation. Regional Native Americans used oil medicinally as a healing salve, as a purge, and as a tonic. And they all as bug repellent, to waterproof animal hides, and to make decorative paint. So, as you can see, and as we try to teach visitors that come to museum, the Drake well was definitely not the first well to discover oil, but rather our significance lies in the fact that the Drake well was the well that launched an industry. The Drake well oil strike happened at a time when there was a strong demand for large quantities of crude oil. In the 1700s, whale oil was the primary lamp fuel and lubricant used in businesses and households in the United States. But by 1750, whales were becoming harder and harder to find because they were being hunted to extinction. The decline in supplies, plus the expense of sending whaling fleets further and further out on hunts, sent the price of whale oil skyrocketing. By 1830, families in the US were expected to pay $2 per gallon for whale oil. This would equate to around $80 per gallon today. And as you can imagine, to pay this exorbitant amount for lamp fuel, a product which they were using on a daily basis. So scientists and entrepreneurs began looking for an alternative. One such entrepreneur was Samuel Keir. In the late 1840s, Keir ran a salt well drilling operation outside of Pittsburgh in Tarentum, Pennsylvania. For salt well drillers, oil was an annoying byproduct of the process. And initially, Keir and other salt well drillers just let that oil byproduct, run on Pennsylvania canal system. However, canal owners and boat operators really put a stop to that rather quickly after the first few fires. So Keir, couldn't just let it run through and ignore this issue. His oil annoyance really continued until the wife of one of his friends became ill, and her doctor prescribed American oil. Keir noted that this medicine that she was taking looked and smelled just like the oil byproduct that was coming out of his salt well. So around 1848 or 1849, Keir follows in the footsteps of many who came before him and begins packaging and selling his waste oil as a medicine. Keir's genuine petroleum, pictured here, sold in Pittsburgh for 50 cents a bottle, and it was advertised as a remedy that could cure just about everything, as you can see from this broadside advertisement. Keir was a very proactive salesman, and sales really did boom for a while. In fact, Keir claimed to have sold nearly 250,000 bottles of his medicinal oil. However, he also knew that the fad of using oil as a natural remedy would fade just as quickly as it rose. And he would once again be stuck with the annoying oil. So again, he is proactive, and he began searching for a new outlet for his oil. He began questioning whether it could be used as a lamp fuel. He knew it would burn, but just lighting crude oil on fire produces, rolling black smoke and a terrible smell. That wasn't the answer. So he sent a sample of his oil to be analyzed by Professor James C. Booth in Philadelphia. And Booth told Keir that the oil that he had sent could be used for illumination with a suitable lamp and suitable distillation. So, based on that analysis, Keir began experimenting with distillation in the early 1850s. And after several attempts, he produced a product that burned slowly, produced a strong, steady light, and didn't explode easily. Even better, Keir's product was simple to distill, which made it less expensive, a much less expensive process. By 1851, he had set up the first crude oil refinery in the United States at the corner of Grant Street and 7th Avenue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he began producing what people would come to call kerosene. Keir used the 5-barrel still pictured here in his refinery. He had done what folks had been trying to do for years. He developed an inexpensive lamp fuel to replace whale oil. All Keir needed was large quantities of crude oil to meet the demand for this inexpensive lighting fuel. And the Drake well would be the well that met that need. In 1857, the Seneca Oil Company of Connecticut sent Edwin L. Drake to Titusville, Pennsylvania, and charged him with determining whether the area would produce crude oil in commercially successful quantities. They chose Titusville because it was a proven oil area with natural seeps and pre-colonial oil pits. During his trip, Drake visited salt wells as well as the principal spring of the Brewer, Watson and Company lumber mill, which was located in what is today the museum's main parking lot. What he saw convinced him that the company could in fact produce large quantities of oil. So Drake returns to Titusville in May of 1858, and he gets to work drilling a well. He began first by digging a well at the site of the principal spring of the property. Unfortunately, after several weeks, the workmen hit water and the hole collapsed. At the time, Drake decided to emulate the salt well industry and turned to drilling. He built an engine house and derrick and installed a steam engine and boiler. He also hired experienced salt well driller and blacksmith William Smith, and they adapted and used salt well drilling technology and to drill this well. And what they did was they adapted that technology and they used the percussion method of drilling, which was to drop a sharpened tool a bit onto rock and chip away at that underlying rock. And on August 27th of 1859, the Drake well struck oil at 69.5 feet, giving birth to the modern petroleum industry. Following Edwin L. Drake's success, oil fever really grips this region in Pennsylvania. People, who had thought that this was a fool's errand when Drake started, began rushing up and down the Oil Creek Valley, leasing land, drilling wells, and really developing the early petroleum industry. And for nearly a decade, Pennsylvania's oil region was the center of the world's oil industry, generating new technologies, new business practices, and new wealth. And here's a photo of the Drake well today. At the site of the Drake well, we feature a full board-for-board replica of Drake House. The first one we don't have any images of because they didn't understand natural gas back in those times. And they took an open flame in and there was an explosion and the first one burnt down. But this is a board-for-board replica of the second engine house. And it is located around the exact well site. In fact, the hole in the ground is the actual Drake well. It is a National Historic Landmark, and it is still at a depth of 69.5 feet. The exhibit includes an operating replica of the wood-fired boiler and steam engine that Drake used to drill the well and to pump oil from 1859 to 1861. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share Drake Well Museum and Park with you.
Thank you very much.